we are witnessing the second space race. This time it's not the USA versus the USSR, but the USA versus China. Both nations have set their eyes on the moon, and they're preparing for a showdown. But how evenly matched are these two rivals? How does NASA compare to the Chinese space program? Let's find out. In 2007, they became the third nation to successfully land a spacecraft on the moon's surface. The Americans and the Soviets had done it before them. Of course, despite the fact that NASA has a bigger budget, China has accomplished more in terms of cost effectiveness. Consider this: the Chinese space program has sent 550 astronauts into space, while the American space program has sent 300. China sends an average of 1 astronaut into space every 11 days. Meanwhile, the US can only manage 1 astronaut every 22 days. Or consider the Change missions. Change 5 brought the first lunar samples back to Earth in 44 years. The mission cost just $100 million. A comparable NASA mission would cost at least $2.5 billion. NASA's most recent moon mission, the SLS rocket launch, on the other hand, cost nearly $4.1 billion. Needless to say, the Chinese are pretty proud of their accomplishments. In a recent article, the state-run Global Times boasted that China is catching up with the US in space, with a smaller budget and faster development. The US may have started the space race, but it looks like China is poised to win it. At least that's according to the facts and figures. But this was only the beginning. In the years that followed, China began exploring the far side of the moon, an area that no spacecraft had ever visited before. In 2019, China became the first nation to land a rover on the far side of the moon. China's space program began in the 50s, not long after the launch of Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. But unlike the Soviets, who focused on beating the Americans into space, China had more modest goals. Their first satellite didn't go into orbit. It merely reached an altitude of 120 kilometers above the surface. For perspective, Sputnik orbited 900 kilometers above the surface. But the Chinese were undeterred. They knew that to compete with the Americans, they would need to catch up fast. And so they did. By the end of the 20th century, China was launching about 1 rocket a year, placing satellites into sun-synchronous orbits, gathering valuable data about the Earth's environment. By the early 2000s, China started focusing on the moon. Meanwhile, NASA has been through some lean years. After the end of the Cold War, funding for space exploration took a nosedive. From a peak of 4.3% of the federal budget in 1966, NASA's budget dropped to just 0.5% in 1973. President Ronald Reagan did try to boost NASA's budget to reignite the space program, but his request for $1.2 billion was denied. NASA's budget was increased to just $185 million, far less than what they had requested. As a result, the space shuttle program was delayed by several years. The budget cuts forced the cancellation of several important projects, including the space station, the first space telescope, and the planetary protection system. In the mid-90s, Congress approved a $15.4 billion budget for NASA over 5 years, an increase of 25%. But even that wasn't enough. To keep up with inflation, NASA's budget has effectively been cut in half since the 1960s. So, which space program is better? What do you think? Which space program is better? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more videos.